Hey guys, I'm Robert and I'd like to welcome you down here to the Apex Barn. Today is actually a neat little topic for me. It is about how to select the perfect taxi for the Nürburgring. It's something we've put a lot of thought into and something I'm excited to share with you guys because there's always recommendations. Why don't you take this car? Why don't you take that car? And every single car has a thought and a purpose behind it. I actually came into the barn just now to sit down and figure out what car I was going to sit in front of to record this video. And there was this amazing SLS Black sitting here, which, as you guys know from one of the last videos, somebody just left here. But in all seriousness, this thing's amazing. It's the first time I sat in it and I like it. I mean, beautiful carbon fiber work. The leather's very nice. The look of it, it's a really cool car. Tim did a fantastic job with the paint on the outside. It's definitely a car that has changed my opinion of the whole AMG brand. So good job, Tim. This sitting in here might have cost me a few bucks. But before we start off on the whole taxi topic, I'm just going to shut the door, look around a little bit, and I'll catch you guys in a moment. All right, guys, now that I'm done drooling over the SLS Black, I will tell you that, of course, you have to take a lot of consideration when you're putting stickers on somebody's car, but it is all in good fun. Tim is a friend of ours. He's a friend of mine. We go way back to our earlier McLaren days when we were both buying different cars and talking about specs and maybe even problems that we had and things like that, or exciting new cars that were coming out. And it's obviously developed into him coming to Apex, staying at the hotel, doing different things, and trusting us enough to keep his car here. So I do have to take very serious responsibility when I put stickers on it, make sure there's no scratches, make sure there's no damage or anything like that. We had a professional put the stickers on the car, and we will have a professional take it off and make sure everything looks good. But I do have to say, in all honesty, this car is badass. I really do like it. I have not really given AMG too much time. In the whole car market right now, there's so many directions that you can go, and I just haven't been able to really look at them. This thing's beautiful, and I could honestly tell you that there's a chance that I would see one of these in my garage as a daily driver, or like Tim uses as just a neat GT cruiser. But the paint, the combination, the interior, the leather, how everything's put together, the quality of the carbon fiber inside, I was really, really impressed. So AMG, great job on building that car, and Tim, great job on speccing it and repainting it and everything like that, top notch. But I think that's enough of that. Let's get serious, let's get down to business here. The topic for the day is, as I mentioned earlier, how do you pick the perfect Nürburgring taxi? If you go through our Instagram and YouTube comments and Facebook comments and direct messages, I have been told, Robert, why don't you take anything from a Ford Fiesta all the way up through, who knows, a Koenigsegg as your taxi. And the issue is that there's so many different variables that you have to take into consideration when selecting the perfect Nürburgring taxi that you couldn't just say, oh, I'm going to take that and be like, yeah, let's do that, let's buy that. We've had ideas from four-seaters ranging from building a Golf up to the most amazing TCR style a car with 4 doors and cages, kind of like we did with our M3, all the way through a GTC4 Lusso with the V12 and just a ton of emotion. And all of these cars couldn't check all of the boxes that we needed to have fulfilled. So let's just do a real quick recap on what are those boxes. One needs to be reliability. There needs to be a certain level of reliability that a car has to have in order to run as a taxi, because they do a lot of laps a year. You can count, if you're doing a good number of laps, anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 laps per year on a car, maybe more if things go well. Like I've said before, 2020 will not see that. The car needs to be able to run. If it can't run, if something happens, you need to have support from the manufacturer or from your dealer network or local mechanics that can get the car running immediately. You can't have a car that breaks and is down for weeks on end or months on end and have it run as your taxi, because if that happens, that means you're going to have upset customers, you're going to look bad, and you're going to lose revenue. And that's obviously a big problem and a big concern that we have when we're running these taxis. So that's something that takes a huge consideration. The next thing is you need to fulfill your customers' desires and wishes in a way that sells laps. Sometimes your wishes and your customers' wishes are two complete different things. We have had situations where people come in and you've got the M4 VLN car, which is one of the most exciting cars I've ever been in on the Nürburgring at pace. Emotional, the differential screaming, the engine screaming, the exhaust, there's no insulation in the car, and its corner speeds are one of the fastest of many of the cars I've been in. People see the M4 and they say, oh, yeah, I really wanted something fast. What's the horsepower? Well, it's making 560 horsepower. Yeah, you know, but the McLaren was 720 horsepower. Yeah, well, the M4's lap time is going to be faster. Yeah, but the doors go up on the McLaren. And there's these certain notions of people, or I should say preconceived ideas of these people as to what cars are. And an M4 is just an M4, even if it was completely built, competed in the 24-hour race, and is the most emotional car that you can get in. So there's all of these different concepts that you have to deal with. So we've learned that sometimes somebody doesn't care if you're in a fully built race car with 560 horsepower, but they want to know what's the 0 to 60 time or the 0 to 100 time. What's the horsepower rating? Things like that that may actually have nothing to do with the actual excitement around the Nürburgring, so we have to play a lot into that. We weighed at the beginning about doing the M5. It was just coming out. It was just a hot car versus the M3. And I said here internally, we won't get an M5. It's a heavy car. It's not a car that I think is going to be as much fun as a properly built M3. Sure, it's got a ton of power, and that's an exciting feeling, but it will not be as fast as a properly built M3. I want a car that's nimble, that actually represents racing on the Nürburgring. There's a lot of M3s out on the track. There's a lot of 3 Series BMWs, and that was a car that was going to be exciting for us. There's a certain percentage of our customers that see the M3, they see a full cage, they see race harnesses, they see just tons of camber. When you walk up, something looks off, you know, because the wheels are pointed in. You've got a wing on the back, a big, beautiful carbon fiber splitter on the front, and they know it means business. They know the car's mean. But then there's other people that come up to it and they say, oh, well, how much horsepower does it have? Yeah, it's an M3. I'm thinking about an M5. Do you have an AMG GT 4-door? Because that has a million horsepower. I'd love to go in that. And they don't see it the same way that us enthusiasts do. They see it as an experience, and they think horsepower is going to make that experience. So you do have to find that balance when you're looking at these cars. Another thing that we have is when you're looking at the 2-seater segment, you've got 600 LT, 720S, now a GT2 RS, incoming a 620R. When we went from the 720S to the 600 LT, we had to say, okay, this could go bad. People may not like this. Even though the 600 LT is a more exciting car, it puts out just about the same lap times if you really want to be serious about how fast you get around the track. It just doesn't have the same power number. You're not accelerating out of the turn at the same point, but you're arriving at the turn with minimal braking, which actually almost feels scarier because you as maybe somebody with less experience thinks, I need to be on the brakes hard. In the 600 LT, you're using less brake and you're arriving, you feel like you're taking a higher corner speed. The lack of insulation, the exhaust right behind your head, all of this creates a more exciting experience. Nobody has gotten out of the 600 LT and said, oh my gosh, that was terrible. I wish I was in the 720. They have gotten into it thinking that and got out with a changed mind. There are people that have said, oh, if the 720 is not here, yeah, I don't want to do it. I want to do something else. And those people have missed out. So when we're doing taxi, we're dealing with a lot of people's perceptions of cars and perceptions of the ring, and they may have never even been on it before. So when you guys send us messages, what do you think about this car? What do you think about that car? What do you think about a Koenigsegg? You know, we have to actually weigh down the differences. With McLaren, you guys might say, oh gosh, how could you talk about reliability and McLaren at the same time? I've run McLarens for a long time. I've got tons of laps on the Nürburgring, and we know how to make them work. We know what goes wrong. And if we don't, we have a very good dealer network and very good relationships with the McLaren factory that can come through and help us and say, hey, this is the part you need. This is how we can get this car back on the road because it looks good for them and it looks good for us. If McLaren knows that they have a car on the Nürburgring that's out there just kicking butt, it looks good for the brand. So they're sure to get us parts if we need them, and they're sure to make sure that we're on the road. If you look at something like the GT2 RS, why would we take a car like that? It's an expensive car, but you know what? It's the fastest car on the Nürburgring right now. 6 minutes and 40 seconds, 0.3. That's an amazing quick lap time, something that's almost not fathomable for most people, and that says something all on its own. Well, we work with Manthey Racing to build the car. They give us great support. They're literally just a couple kilometers away from here. I can get there on my bike in 10 minutes and in a car in 3 minutes. It's absolutely amazing. Well, same exact situation. If our car's out there running and we need anything, they know, hey, you know what? Apex is running the car. We can help them really quick. We can get this car on the road, have a good showing for the brand, have a good showing for our product, and it works. The same thing goes with the M3 Taxi. We've got Team Schirmer. This car is completely built by Team Schirmer. The M3 has not been to BMW for one piece of service, one update, one protocol, nothing. We've done everything either in-house or with Team Schirmer, whether it be transmission fluid changes, turbo swaps, motor swaps, obviously all of the drivetrain, drive shafts and everything like that we've done in-house. We have availability to parts. The part supply is endless for BMW. We have availability to new wheels if we need them, to new motors if we need them. Every single thing that we need for our BMW M3 is at our fingertips. If we ran an AMG and we needed specific parts to the car, I wouldn't even know where to begin to look for them. People run AMGs on the track, but there's nowhere near the number of AMG GT 4-doors on the track, or any 4-door AMG or Mercedes product as a whole, as there is BMW M3s. Same thing with the GT2 RS. Porsche is a mainstream brand that is building high volume of cars and has access to their products and their parts anywhere that they go and anywhere that they need to be. So we can get parts that we need. You know that some of you guys may know that we had a minor incident with the GT2 back when it was new, and we had some damage and we needed parts. We got the car to Manthey Racing, and it was I say minor damage, it was a decent damage. People would not be happy if it was their car. It needed parts from turbo housings to body panels to wheels to control arms, suspension parts, etc. And Manthey Racing had that car back on the road for us in 4 days. If it was anywhere else other than at the Nürburgring with access to all of this knowledge and parts, it could have been a 1 month or 2 month downtime. So that to us is a huge, huge part of what we need to have in terms of running a taxi. So when you guys send us these different products and say, what do you think about that? Maybe they don't fit that bill. I can't think of many cars that have the access to parts that what Manthey Racing has access to for the Porsche product. I can't think of many parts or cars that have access to parts like Team Schirmer has to BMW or all of the other BMW shops around the area. So it really, really is a wealth of knowledge for the cars that we run. But most importantly for me, I'm excited about the cars. Sometimes I may run a McLaren because, let's be honest, is there a wealth of knowledge about McLaren around the Nürburgring? No, it's probably here. We're probably the most knowledgeable people about McLaren at the Nürburgring in terms of systems and issues, but we do have a very good relationship with the dealer and with McLaren themselves, so we're able to get that support and able to get parts that we need as fast as possible. If we did not have that, I would not be able to run a McLaren. There's no way. Running a Ferrari would be very difficult. Ferrari's not that interested in the whole taxi business. They don't like it. They don't need it. Their brand is what their brand is. They don't need somebody going and having an issue and breaking down and them looking bad and all of that. So you're not going to get the same support from Ferrari or from their dealer network that you are from McLaren, which is a company that wants to see themselves build and build their brand image. So these are all things that you have to keep in mind. So when you're thinking about what taxi would you run on the Nürburgring, you have to put in many different factors. Customers' perception of high horsepower versus excitement. Do I want the biggest number and the lowest 0 to 100 time? You have to think about accessibility of parts, reliability of the car, and longevity of the car. You know, can the car do this for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years? I fully expect the GT2 RS to be able to handle what we're doing with it for 3 or 4 years if we want it to. I can honestly say that I run the McLarens 1 year, then bring them down a level to where they're only part-time, and then bring that one down a level till it's only part-time. And that is something that is the honest truth with the McLaren. And they are both running today perfectly and with no issues, but I don't necessarily want to put them through 60,000 kilometers as the M3 has been. In that same breath, the M3 has been a car that we have thrown a lot of parts at. The M3 has been our highest cost for maintenance and our highest operating cost vehicle that we have, which is kind of interesting to think about. But that's because we're running specific parts on the car. It's had a new motor, it's had new turbos, it's probably going to get a new transmission soon. It's gone through several differentials, and if you had to do that with a McLaren, you wouldn't be able to afford to do it as a business case. It just wouldn't work. So, but yeah, I hope that gives you guys a little bit of insight into this whole taxi program and how we select cars and why we select cars. Maybe there's cars that I would love to run just from an emotional standpoint, like my E36 GTR. I would love to run that, but people aren't going to want to get into a 25-year-old car and take a taxi lap. 30% of you would love it and be like beating down the door. The other 70% would be like, oh man, an old BMW, that's crazy, until it goes out and passes whatever they picked. Then they might say, well, wait a minute, that could be a little bit different story. It's that initial perception in this business that you have to get over. If we had a much larger customer base and we had thousands of people just saying, oh, I want that experience because it's with Apex, then we could do it and we could run whatever we want. We would probably even have more fun with it. It'd be pretty cool, but we do have to meet that customer's expectation at the moment still. But I think something cool would be for you guys to mention down in the comments what your dream taxi would be. And I'll actually take maybe 10 of those taxis that you suggest. I'll do some research on them and I'll tell you why I do or don't think that they could be a valuable candidate for the taxi program. It might be a fun way for us to interact. So please go to the comment section, list 1 or 2 cars that you think would be the ultimate Nürburgring taxi. We'll get maybe myself, Tim, Misha, maybe we'll sit down and just do a little video about what we think of each car. I'll bring it up as a surprise to the guys and we can go from there. Anyways, thank you all for the support, the comments. We're doing our best to answer every one of them, and we'll catch you guys later.